Time to celebrate. It's my birthday month, TBR. Hello book friends, I'm Jen and welcome to my reading life and welcome to my October TBR. October also happens to be my birthday month. My birthday is on the 1st of October and it's fun to just use the whole month to celebrate. And this year I am curating a TBR just for my birthday month, just books that I really want to read. And I've already shared the couple of books I'm going to read for Victober this year, so I won't go over those again, but I will link my Victober TBR video here and you can go check that out if you'd like to see what I'm going to read for that. And the rest of these are just books that I really want to read this month. I do have a couple of books that fall into a few of the reading, I don't want to say challenges, but goals I have for myself for this year. But other than that, this is just a plain old fun TBR filled with books that I just feel like I'm in the mood for at the moment. And of course, this is really just a pile of possibilities. I am sure I will not get to all of these, and maybe I won't read any of them. Maybe I will feel in the mood for something else, but this is what I'm in the mood for at this moment when I am about to film this video. Let us dive into the books. I hope you have a lovely warm beverage of choice, and let's see what the books are. First up, I will share the 3 books that fall into the reading goals that I have for this year. And the first of those books is next up in the Lord Peter Wimsey mystery series that I'm reading through this year, and that is Gaudy Night. And I can't tell you how excited I am that Gaudy Night falls in my birthday month. I have read Gaudy Night in the past and absolutely loved it. Gaudy Night features Harriet Vane and it is set at Oxford University. And in this one, it says Harriet's alma mater is there. She's there for a reunion known as the Gaudy. The prim academic setting is haunted by a rash of bizarre pranks, scrawled obscenities, burnt effigies, and poisoned pen letters. Some of the notes threaten murder. All are perfectly ghastly. Harriet finds herself ensnared in a nightmare of romance and terror with only the tiniest shreds of clues to challenge her powers of detection and those of her paramour, Lord Peter Wimsey. I'm so excited to reread this because I literally, other than it being set in Oxford and other than remembering that I really loved this one, I don't remember a thing about it, so it'll be like reading it again for the first time. I'm so happy that this is the book in the series that fell in my birthday month. And then next up, I have the book that I am going to read off of my TBR 24 and 24. I feel like I'm falling a little bit behind my TBR 24 and 24. I think as of right now, I have 7 books still left to read. Eek. I'm gonna maybe have to do some swaps. I'm not sure what is happening here. I have actually read more than 24 books off of my TBR shelves because I am challenging myself this year to read an additional 50 books off of my TBR that I didn't have on my 24 and 24 challenge list. So I may have to do some swapping. We'll see how this goes as I enter into the final months of the year. But next up, of the books I originally chose to read for TBR 24 and 24, I have Radio Girls by Sarah Jane Stratford. And this is a historical fiction. It's set in London in 1926. And we follow American-raised Maisie Musgrave. She lands a job as a secretary at the BBC, whose use of radio, which is still very new, has captivated the nation. And she's feeling a little insecure, but she's seduced by the work and she gets caught up in a growing conflict between her 2 bosses, John Reith, the formidable Director General of the BBC, and Hilda Matheson, the extraordinary director of the hugely popular Talks programming, who each have a very different vision of what radio should be. Under Hilda's tutelage, Maisie discovers her talent, passion, and ambition. But when she unearths a shocking conspiracy, she and Hilda join forces to make their voices heard both on and off the air, and then face the dangerous consequences of telling the truth for a living. So that sounds really, really good. I haven't really read anything, I don't think, about the BBC or about the early days of radio in England, and I am very much looking forward to this one. It sounds really good. Has anyone read this? Did you enjoy it? This has been on my shelf for a number of years. Finally gonna get to it. And then the last reading goal that I have for October that I want to complete is to read the next volume in Middlemarch. I am on book 6. So book 6 is what I'll be reading in October, and I've been mostly listening to this on audio. And then after I listen to the audiobook, I do go back and make annotations in this physical copy and mark down quotes and different things that struck me while I was listening. So that has been a really enjoyable way to read Middlemarch this year. And I have books 6, 7, and 8 left to go. I'll be finishing this in December, and this feels like such a satisfying read for me for this year, and I'm so excited to have finally read Middlemarch. I'm absolutely loving it. Hi everyone, Future Jen here because I forgot to include one book for my October TBR, and that is the Ghost Stories of Edith Wharton, which I am reading with my Gilded Age buddy read group, and I'm really looking forward to this one. Ghost stories in October sound perfect. So just had to come in and add in this one more book to my TBR. All the rest of the books are ones that just sounded good to me. I pulled off my shelf, and they are just kind of what I feel like reading right now. And we'll see how many of these I actually get to. I have a couple of rereads, so maybe I'll go over those first, and then we will dive into the remainder of the books that I have here. I don't know that these are organized in any way, shape, or form, but let us start with the first rereads. The first reread that I would like to get to in October is Up a Road Slowly by Irene Hunt. And this is one of my favorite childhood books. It's a Newbery winner, and it is about Julia. She would always remember her happy days at Aunt Cordelia's, running through the spacious room, singing on rainy nights in front of the fireplace. There were the rides in the woods on Peter the Great and the races with Danny Trevort. There were the precious moments alone in her room at night, gazing at the sea of stars. But there were sad times too, the painful jealousy Julie felt after her sister married, the tragic death of a schoolmate, and the bitter disappointment of her first love. Julie was having a hard time believing life was fair, but Julie would have to be fair to herself before she could even think about new beginnings. I just remember this was one of the books that really got me into coming of age stories, and I haven't read it since I was a young girl, and I am super excited to read it again. And it seemed like my birthday month was the perfect time, and I think it might actually start in the fall. I feel like, yes, it says 3 children stood outside our gate in the bright October sunlight. So October feels like the perfect month to get to this reread. And then next, I have chosen a collection of short stories by one of my very favorite authors, Laurie Colwin. I'm going to read Passion and Affect. I think it's Affect. Passion and Effect? Maybe it's Passion and Effect. I've always said Affect. I don't know why. I'm just going to go with that. But this is just a series of short stories, and we follow some different characters. And one of the stories in here is actually a story about the characters from my favorite novel, Happy All the Time. And so that is fun. And I haven't read this short story collection in such a long time, and I just found this used copy of this edition, which I didn't have, and I just think that's so lovely. So I'm excited to dive into more Laurie Colwin, and I'm just going to put this one on my bedside table and dip in and out of it. I think there's like 12 or 14 stories in here, and I am just going to enjoy them during my birthday month. And then next up is the book that I promised all of you I was going to read in October, and I am going to read it in October. I am actually planning to start it on my birthday, and that is Village School by Miss Read. I am finally going to read a Miss Read book, and I am so excited. I cannot wait. And I think this is sort of just a collection of like stories. From what I understand, I don't know that this is necessarily like reads like a novel. Can anyone confirm or deny that? But either way, I am here for all of the cozy village life stories, and I'm excited to begin this series by Miss Read, the Fairacre series, and then hopefully this will prompt me to keep going in this, and I would love to pick up Thrush Green as well. But this is going to be the beginning of my Miss Read reading journey, and I cannot wait. And then next is a book that I just recently purchased because in September I read Near Neighbors by this author and absolutely loved it. And that is Dear Hugo by Molly Clavering. And this is a bit of an epistolary novel. It says, Sarah Monteith makes an ideal correspondent for Hugo Jameson, brother of her lost love, Ivo, killed in the war before they could marry. Her neighbors in the lovely border village of Ravenskirk don't know that Sarah has moved here because it's where Ivo and Hugo grew up. But they welcome her warmly. Soon she's drawn into the active village social scene of tea parties, gardening, carol singing, and coronation festivities, dodging the judgments of stern Miss Bonnelly, defending her helper Madge Marchbanks, an unwed mother, befriending kind, practical Elizabeth Drysdale, and charming Mrs. Curie and her daughter Sylvia, the latter first met halfway through Sarah's drawing room window, and having an embarrassing first encounter with rugged Major Whitburn. Add in her nephew Arthur, neglected by an indifferent father, Arthur's dog Pam, and even Hugo himself returning unexpectedly from overseas, and Sarah's life is a ceaseless whirl indeed. Very excited. I've heard wonderful things about this book, and I'm very excited to read it in October. And then next is another collection of short stories, and that is Final Acts, Theatrical Mysteries, edited by Martin Edwards. This is part of the British Library Crime Classics series, and I mentioned this, one of my subscribers, Jacqueline, sent this to me, and I am so excited to dive into it. It's going to be the month of short stories, it appears. I guess I am just in the mood to dip in and out of some lovely stories. So I'll probably also keep this on my bedside table and maybe alternate it with the Laurie Colwin stories, but I'm excited to have some mystery short stories to get to. Feels very fall and October to read short stories that are mysteries. And then next, I have another book that is part of a series that I started and really want to continue on with, and that is the Mrs. Tim series. This is Mrs. Tim Carries On by D.E. Stevenson. And I read the first Mrs. Tim book, which I believe is Mrs. Tim of the Regiment, which, let me tell you, is a very difficult book to track down here in the US. And I think I ended up getting the audiobook of it. That was the only way that I could find it. It's very challenging to get. I don't even know that it's like in print at the moment, but I think the publishing rights are held by a publisher that's not Dean Street Press. Dean Street Press has the rights to the second, third, and fourth book in the Mrs. Tim series, but not the first. And yes, but I wanted to read the series in order, so I wanted to start with that one, listen to it on audio. Absolutely loved it. So we just follow Mrs. Tim. Her husband is in the military, and she has to sort of follow the regiment around as her husband gets moved. And we just follow her and her life with her husband and her children. And this just carries on, and it's all written in diary format. So basically we are reading Mrs. Tim's diaries. And I think it's kind of like Diary of a Provincial Lady, which I'm hoping to also get to later this year. We shall see. It's on my TBR 24 and 24. But first up, gonna read Mrs. Tim Carries On. Let's see. In this one, her husband is stationed in France, and Hester finds plenty to keep herself busy on the home front. From her first air raid and a harrowing but hilarious false alarm about a German invasion to volunteering at the regiment's comfort depot, guiding the romantic destinies of her pretty house guest and an injured soldier, and making a flying visit to a blacked out London with its fighting spirit intact, Mrs. Tim does indeed carry on in inimitable style. I am very excited to continue on with Mrs. Tim, and then I do have books 3 and 4 in this series, which, let's see, I think is Mrs. Tim Gets a Job and Mrs. Tim Flies Home, and I want to read the entire series, so hopefully I will do that in not too long a period of time. It's been quite a while since I read the first Mrs. Tim book. You all know how this goes. So many books, so little time, and sometimes you start a series and then you just get sidetracked, or at least I do. Does that happen to anyone else? To get sidetracked from series that you're really enjoying and then other books just fall into your lap? And my final book is another book that is part of a series, and that is The Unselected Journals of Emma M. Lyon, Volume 7 by Beth Brower. And I am so excited because in addition to really wanting to read this, and I had decided to save it for my birthday month, I just heard today that Beth Brower has announced that Volume 8 is coming out in early December. And I did just want to remind everyone, I am doing an Emma M. Lyon read-along starting in January. We are going to read all of the currently published volumes. So now that we'll go through volume 8, and we're going to start in January and read one volume each month, and then we will discuss it. I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to do the discussion forums yet, but I will get that figured out shortly. And we will read one book a month and finish in August with volume 8. Or if she publishes volume 9 before September of next year, we'll read that one too. But yes, so I'm very excited to follow Emma M. Lyon's adventures in this next volume. I'm not going to share too much about it because I do think that you should start with volume 1 and read the entire series all the way through, because there's definitely spoilers in terms of what's going on in this volume. So no synopsis for this one, but just know I am super excited to get to it. And this is another book written in diary format, and I just love diary, journal, epistolary novels. It's just one of my favorite types of books to read, and I highly recommend Emma M. Lyon, and I really hope that you'll join us for the read along, and I will be having more details about that coming very, very soon. So stay tuned for that. And I think that's it for my October birthday month TBR. I am so excited to just read lots of good books in October. I really just want to kind of settle into all of the cozy, lovely mysteries, fall, autumnal, just lovely stories that I can get my hands on, and these are the books I have picked so far, but who knows, maybe I'll decide to swap them out for something else. But I am going to read Miss Read. I 100% promise you that. That is a for sure. Everything else I'll hopefully read. We will see. That's actually not too many books. I thought it was more, but I have, let's see, 7 plus the 3 books, which aren't even full books because Middlemarch is just one volume, one section of Middlemarch that I'm reading. So I have 7, 8, 9 books. So I could potentially read all of those in October. I've been averaging about 10 to 11 books a month, so that's doable. How funny would that be if I read my entire TBR in the month of October? Happy birthday to me. I'd love to know from you in the comments below. Have you read any of the books that I mentioned here today, or do any of them sound particularly good to you, or anything else bookish you'd like to chat about down in the comments? I hope that you have a wonderful reading plan for October. Oh, also share what you're planning to read in October. I would love to know that as well. Do you like to read seasonal books in October? Fall is one of my favorite times of year to read seasonally. Thank you so much for watching this video, for liking, subscribing, for just being a part of my little bookish corner of BookTube. And I'll be back with another video very soon. Bye.